Hi everyone, I'm Andy and welcome to Southern Custom Cuts. Today I'm going to be making this simple wall-mounted jewelry display. Let's get started. I'm starting with some scrap dimensional lumber left over from a previous project. I'm going to join these two pieces using my doweling jig and making my holes 2 inches apart. I'll run a bit of 150 grit sandpaper over the holes to make sure that they're smooth, and repeat the process on the second piece. Next, I'll add some Titebond 2 to the holes and tap in the dowels until seated. After a quick dry fit, I'll add glue along the edge and the dowel holes. Then I'll join the two pieces together. Now, I'll be making the centerpiece that'll run perpendicular along the joint I just created. Using my miter saw, I'll make a rough cut. If you'd like to follow future projects as I'm making them, be sure to follow me on Instagram, @Southern Custom Cuts. As I said, all of the dimensional lumber I'm using today was left over from a previous project. This particular piece had some damage to it, so I'm going to use my table saw to take off about 1/8 of an inch. Because the max height of my table saw is 3.5 inches, I'll turn the piece over and complete the rest of the removal. For a couple of funny moments, be sure to watch until the end of the video. Next, I'll take it over to my belt sander for a little quick cleanup. Then, I'll hit it with 150 grit and then 220 grit. There was a lot of sanding for this project. Now that the glue's dried, I'll remove the clamps and scrape off any squeeze out. With this being a project from recycled materials, I didn't really build a plan for it and use what materials were available. I'm using the centerpiece to measure out the length of the overall piece on the back section, then back to the miter saw for the cut. Oh, and there's more sanding. Using my portable workbench, I hold the centerpiece in place and drill pilot holes every 2 inches. Then repeat this step on the back section and drill out a countersink hole. I'm lining up the first and last holes, then begin sinking each screw. Using the cutoff from the back section, I'm cleaning up the remaining glue squeeze out with my chisel. Then, of course, there's sanding. To make the end supports, I'll mark the depth of the display. Now, I want a rounded end that matches the depth of the display. I didn't have a compass on hand, so I used a pencil and a piece of string as a makeshift compass. I held the string down at the end of the support and wrapped the string around the pencil until I achieved the correct distance. Then slowly started marking the piece. Be sure to hold the pencil straight up and down. I used my jigsaw to cut just outside of my pencil mark. Thanks to some feedback on Instagram, a follower shared that I was using the wrong type of blade in my jigsaw, which created a lot of tear out. So what did I do? I bought new blades like any good creator would do. I then squared up my edges on the table saw. I know that my hand looks really close in the shot, but I promised that I had plenty of clearance. Next, I checked for any depth differential after the table saw cleanup. I marked the new height on the support and used my sander to remove the material up to the pencil line. Before I add the wings, I mark out the position of the keyholes. I used a temporary fence and my palm router to route out those keyholes. Having a shop vac hose nearby is essential because it creates a substantial amount of dust. And wait, there's more. Sanding! Next, I'll add a bit of glue along the edge, clamp it together, and then a few brad nails to hold it in place. Then repeat the process on the other side. I didn't like how the screws looked, so I took some wood filler and filled in the holes. Once the filler had completely dried, I sanded it smooth up to 220 grit. Now this is a gift from my mom, and she tends to like natural wood colors. So I decided I would stain the jewelry display in a cherry color. I'd like to take a moment and thank you for watching this video. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button below and the bell icon to keep up to date on all of my projects. It would help me out so that I can continue to make new content. Now the moment that every woodworker waits most. I finished it off with 3 coats of clear gloss poly and sanded between coats with 400 grit sandpaper. So I know that I mentioned this is a jewelry display, right? Just kidding. I used my square to determine the spacing of the white hooks. I used my brad point bit to mark the locations for each hook. Then one by one they started jumping into their new homes. I flipped the piece around and began marking the opposite side, making sure to center the new markings between the existing hooks. I wanted to make sure that they were offset from each other so it would be easier when hanging the jewelry. I realized that the process went much faster if I drilled pilot holes for the hooks. And with that, this project's a wrap. I think this is going to look great hanging in my mom's house. Thanks again for joining me today. Until next time, I'm Andy, and this is Southern Custom Cuts.